Hello viewers, welcome to another episode of Women's View. As always, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. My name is Murenga, and today's topic is very interesting: marriage killers and marriage builders. As usual, I have guests with me in studio, and I'd like them to introduce themselves, starting with the lady to my extreme right.
Hi, it's really nice to be here. My name is Angie Murenga. I'm an ordained minister, a pastor, marketplace ministry, but I'm also an executive certified leadership coach. I'm an author, I'm a speaker, and a mother, and a mother to many as well.
Welcome to the show, Angie.
Thank
it's great
you.
to have you here.
Thank you very much.
We also have another guest.
Thank you, Anne.
Yes.
My name is Sumi Mwai. I'm a wife, married to Tom Kanyi, and together we have 2 children, Wangeshi and Kanyi.
Wow.
Professionally, I'm a counselor, and my main areas of interest are marriage, restoration. I have a bias for marriage.
Yes.
So I usually would tell clients who come to me that if they come to me hoping to help, that I would help them end their marriage, I am most likely not the person for them. But often when I say that, I think they're not prepared for that declaration.
I know, so it's the opposite of what you're expecting.
Yes, so a lot of them are like, okay, let's see how it goes today. And by the end of the session, they're happy to have follow-up sessions, and often to the restoration of their marriage.
Yes.
But I also have a passion for loss, grief, and bereavement. So those are the 2 areas I do for counseling.
Okay.
But I also run a program for wives for the healing, restoration, and continued enrichment of marriage. It's a program that runs for 13 weeks.
Wow, okay.
And the next one is about to begin.
Good, so people can sign up.
Yes, people can sign up.
But you've got to be a wife.
You have to be a wife because these are lessons that are only applicable within the marriage confines.
Okay.
We also have a dinner that aims at the celebration of marriage.
Excellent.
And it's a dinner again for women. You don't have to be a wife for this one. It's for women, young girls who are aspiring for marriage, people who've been married but divorced, but still believe in the institution of marriage.
But it's for ladies only?
For ladies only, and that happens once a year.
When
coming
up
on the 3rd of November.
Excellent, it's pretty soon.
Yes,
I'm happy that you've told us about it, and I know that some of our viewers are going to be joining you in those 2 activities. Welcome to the show, ladies.
Thank you.
Now, the last time we were talking, we got a few SMSs, and I wanted to read a couple. So there's one from Eric from Murenga. He's saying, I have a wife and 3 kids. The problem is my in-laws are indulging in my family affairs and it's affecting my marriage. What do I do? That is a very appropriate question for today's topic, marriage killers and marriage builders. Another SMS is from Jane from Nakuru. I have been married for 5 years, but my husband doesn't trust me in anything I tell him. Please help me. So thank you so much. Our SMS lines are open and they are 21144. Kindly send in your questions, your comments, and we're going to tackle them either today or at another show. Thank you. Maybe we can start with these questions. In-laws, how do in-laws affect marriages? Do they, especially when they're killing them? Maybe we can talk about that.
I think even when the in-laws, because I was going to say it's both positive and negative.
Exactly.
Because first of all, the parents come from a positive...
a place of love.
Yes, they want to help in the marriage, but sometimes it doesn't help. And that's why I like the Ephesians 5 scripture that says it says man shall leave his father and his mother.
Yes.
But for a long time I thought it was about man, only the male. But then I thought about in Genesis 1:26 it says, let us make man in our image, describing the whole of humanity and describing male and female. So now if you look at that scripture, it says the man shall, so both men and women need to leave Yeah, they says you should leave your mother and your father. It's very clear. Forsaking all others. Some versions say forsaking all others, and you live to cleave to one another.
Exactly.
So that's very, very important. Most, I think, I'd like to say that most parents who meddle, it's not intentional to spoil the marriage. They're just doing what they think is the right thing, or they don't know that they shouldn't be meddling, and a lot of parents do. But the Bible is clear, especially if it's a Christian marriage. The Bible is clear that you have to walk away from everybody else and all that you know, and the two of you need to live and to cleave to one another, you know. So that's very, very important. So I think now that foundation, because we're talking about marriage killers, one of the marriage killers is the interference of in-laws, and then having an undue influence on you that is that's not supposed to be good, because it can really mess things up. So I would think that now this gentleman needs to, sometimes that when people come across a problem, I tell them to take 10 steps backward and view the whole thing from a holistic point of view, probably engage his wife in the conversation on how they can best do it. Because at least for people who are not married, that's one of the things that you should never do. You should never get into in-law wars or in-law confrontations or in-law disagreements. Everybody should be dealing with their own. Like, I should deal with my parents, he should deal with his, and his side of the family, and you never cross, because that's something that's very hard to come back from. But I think it's an understanding of, if I have a disagreement with my own child, we'll come back from it very quickly. If I have a disagreement with somebody else's child, it might take time, and I don't have any vested interest, so maybe there's not that investment, I can just walk away. But with your own child, there's a way that you're able to ruffle each other's feathers and get back on track, because there's something inherent in us. So I think even in-law problems, because we're dealing with those who are having issues and those who are not yet married, be very clear about issues to do with in-laws and who can intervene and why. And even if they advise something, then sit down the two of you and decide what we're going to take from it and what we're not going to take from it. Just like we were talking earlier about even the influence of our parents and our backgrounds, because we can't deny that they have an influence, but we can take the positive and even we can take the negative and say, how am I going to improve this, or this is what I'll never do. So we need to learn from that, so there's a dynamics that needs to be discussed before marriage about how we're going to deal with our in-laws. If it's already in there, then conversations need to happen, and to remember that the whole idea is to cleave to one another.
That's true. I like what you've said. I like especially the point of each person should be the one to deal with their family.
Own parents.
Because you already have a long-term relationship with each other and understanding. So rather than, I hope that this gentleman is not the one who is stepping out to try and resolve an issue with his in-laws. Let it be his wife to speak on his behalf, to tell his parents, and vice versa.
But I think both of them need to first have a discussion about themselves, address what the problem is, what's the problem, then now how are we going to handle this problem with a united front. You know, there's a united front that needs to happen, so that this now issues we handle with a united front.
Because what I've found is that parents are also able to sort of see gaps. So if it's not a united front, they're going to get into that gap and probably interfere more. So united front, and each person deals with their parents.
And then I don't know, I just want to jump in, because I think also that when we talked about not being prepared, that's part of it. That you're not prepared for parental influence. You're not prepared on how you're going to keep the parental influence. It sounds so bad. At bay or in check. I like that one, in check. So this is something that has to be discussed. You know, because we'll have a strong, maybe some are stronger than others. There's a worldview of where you're coming from. I have my own worldview. Now when they come together, they clash. So this is a conversation, part of preparation for marriage, that really has to be discussed in detail. How are we going to handle these things?
Exactly.
So, and I believe also that part of that preparation needs to be to the individual getting married. The living and cleaving is not easy. You know, if I've had this very strong bond with my parents and they're a very present part of my life, how do I just cut them off and delink them from whom I'm becoming as a married person? So I think that it would help that people are prepared that way also, so that they know getting in, the priority now is the marital unit.
Your spouse.
Precisely. Not your parents.
Or your dad.
Not your parents. But even as we consider, you know, a lot of the time we talk about in-laws, but we don't talk about our families of origin.
That's
and
true.
The interference they can have on our marriages. And I guess it's the same thing we are talking about when we are saying it needs to be the individual dealing with their own side of the family. It's that way. I think it means the same thing, but it might help for people to see, to own it, to see that even my own family can be the issue.
Exactly.
But what do you do then when, you know, you've done everything there is to do, but nothing changes?
Exactly.
You know, your parent or the in-law parent happens to be very strong-willed and they're pushing their way, and what do you do? And you still desire for your marriage to succeed.
Exactly. What is the way out of it?
I think, again, from a Christian perspective, the Bible does offer a solution to that. In the love chapter. I don't know what you have to say about that, Pastor, but, you know, love overcomes everything, really. And it is possible to win someone over with love. I work with many couples and many married women, and the older married ones, there are some who've told me how they were rejected by their, mostly it's the mother-in-law. They've been rejected by the mother-in-law, but they, you know, chose to just be loving towards them. And some, it was at the deathbed that this mother-in-law would turn around and say, you know what, I've been wrong. All you have done for me is show me love. That's all you have done, love me. And I'm sorry I've taken you through. So love does win at the end. In the end, if you really do not have anything else you can do about it, then love the person. And just accept
and respect.
Love, accept, respect, honor, and accept the fact that as you married that man, you married him, and you were connected to that. Because were it not for that mother,
he wouldn't even be.
He'd not even be there. So I believe it's possible to see good even in the worst of situations. And if you choose to focus on that good, then increasingly you'll get to see good in this person who appears not to be so loving towards you.
Also, this thing of I'm marrying an individual is very wrong.
It's
actually, you're marrying the whole family. You have entered into a connection. Yes, you're saying leave and cleave.
Nevertheless,
but you're entering into dynamics,
precisely,
worldviews, experiences, generational issues. I mean, patterns.
That's true.
There's a lot more than just this person.
It's not the person in isolation.
Yeah, there's a lot of backing from where they're coming from. Because I was going to say also, which is not easy, but where is that interference coming from? You need to understand what's the foundation. Because the foundation could be love. It's just that I don't know.
Could be love.
This is the way.
This is how love is
expressed.
This is
not love in my family.
Exactly.
This is how love is expressed.
Precisely.
Yes. In our family, we meddle. In our family, you know. So it's also depending on. It's not just what's happening, but what is the. Is it the
driving force?
What's the driving force behind what is taking place?
And I think together with that, Anne, perhaps also consider who your husband is as you're getting married to him, because there are scenarios. Granted, there are some relationships that are not quite healthy,
toxic.
You know, it could be a mother-son relationship that's unhealthy. There's a bond and dependence there that may not be too helpful to the marriage. So yes, the mother may think that they're coming from a perspective of love, but practically how that is manifest in the marriage is anything but love. So understand and appreciate. You know, in marriage there are two types of problems, I like to say. They're perpetual problems and they're solvable problems. Solvable problems you can do something about. Okay. Perpetual ones, if there has been this bond since your husband was born with the mom,
or the sister,
it's not. Perhaps it's not very realistic to expect that just because
you've checked in
and you know that things are going to be any different. But even that can be won over by love. Love through it, as opposed to resist and reject it. You can still get that to work for you than against you.
And I think this finality as well of choice. I think when I hear you speak like that, I'm saying there's a finality of choice. You want this man to choose between you and his mother.
Yeah, that one
it's
is
really
it's
not
a very difficult
it's a very difficult
choice.
one. So, I mean, you put that man, why should he choose? He doesn't have to choose, you know? So I think you should get to that place where, again, it's all about self-awareness. Be confident that you're his wife. Be confident that's his mother.
Yeah.
And you each
And
have
everyone
a
has a role and a
role to
place.
play.
And nobody should be trying to remove the other one from their role or position. And then be confident in the role that you have.
in.
Because I think also that comes from, I feel, it's not 100% true because I don't like absolute answers, but it also comes from a place of insecurity from you as a woman.
Yes,
This
you're
is
not
his
secure in your
mother.
position.
You're not securely positioned. You don't understand your position and you're not, you know, sitting. You know, we say
You're not
sit in the
entrenched.
position, you're not entrenched in that
Exactly.
position. And maybe because you think this position can be shaken is why you're having altercations or back and forth or issues with somebody's mother. Really, that person
That's
gave
true.
birth to
To
that
the
person. And there's a
child.
whole relationship before you came along, you know?
Yeah.
So you've got to remember that. That's what I'm saying. Where's the source? This is her son. This is my daughter.
Yes.
Well, people are not just crazy.
Yes.
So maybe, I don't know, figure out what the dynamics are, look at them, figure out what the problems could be, and begin to address them.
And I like what you said in our earlier episode, Pastor, when you were talking about wholeness. If I'm whole in myself, I really have no issues with my husband relating with his mother. I know at the end of the day, he'll come home to us. I remember working with a client who was like, you know, very upset that the husband had to have chapatis every day. And the chapatis needed to be specifically made by the mom.
Every
so
day?
every day the husband needed to go through
Every
the
day?
mother's house for the chapatis, okay?
Okay.
And she was like, why doesn't he let me make those chapatis? It's not like I make bad chapatis and all that. And I'm like, you know, there's a way
Be
to
happy
go.
that you're not
Be
the one
happy that
making the
you're not the one
chapatis.
daily, you know. I mean, you can turn it
Daily,
around
yes.
to make it work for you. But if you're not whole within yourself,
Yes.
then you will be looking for trouble all over the place.
That's
and
true.
a lack of wholeness in itself is
It's
a
a
huge
problem.
marriage killer.
Gosh, and we're really moving into this, but I was just going to say, don't sweat the small stuff.
Precisely.
I think that's the
That's
thing.
a
Don't
marriage
sweat
killer.
the
Choose your
small stuff.
battles.
Sweating the
Yeah,
small stuff.
look, choose your battles. Which ones do I want to fight? You can't fight chapati battles. But anyway,
Usually,
sweat,
chapati.
don't sweat the small stuff. Look at it and how is this, in the bigger picture,
Yeah.
what is the significance
of this issue.
of this issue?
Do you want it to become a perpetual issue?
Yeah.
Or
Or
is
do
it
you
a
want to just bring
solvable issue?
finality to it and say every day the chapatis have to be there, just pass by, pick
Yeah.
them and we move on?
Yeah, and even every so often, go shop for this mother who supplies chapatis for your house.
Exactly.
You know,
Look, do something.
Send a
Show
card
love.
as a gift.
Send some
Precisely.
flour away.
Precisely. And, you
Send
know,
a gift and a card.
yeah,
know,
is
thank
that
you.
a battle worth fighting?
It is
really?
not,
It
honestly.
really isn't.
I like that, yeah. So that's another marriage killer, actually. Sweating the small stuff.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Being too picky about everything.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
that's
wanting
another.
everything to be perfect and flowing in perfection. Life is not perfect.
My way
People are not perfect.
also,
Yeah, my way or
that
the
things
highway.
must, So, you know, I need things done a particular way because
OCD, is that like being OCD or what?
Perfectionist, OCD, wanting everything to be about self, because that brings back to selfishness, isn't it?
It
When you don't
does.
sweat the small stuff, you take time first of all to think, why is this happening? Why is this important? Is it important to my husband?
big
Let's use the
deal.
chapati story. The chapatis are important to his mom. Clearly, the chapatis are important to him because he passes there every day. Does he come home to me? Yes. Do we have a
does.
thriving marriage? Yes. Is this an issue that can bring a lot of problems? Yes. Do I need to get into it? No.
No, move
And
on.
also, Pastor, there's every possibility that if I stopped him from seeing his mom, I have a disgruntled husband.
Exactly.
You know,
He
so
comes
there
home,
is something
yes,
that
but grumpy.
the mom
Maybe he
does.
comes home happy because of the chapatis, and that is to your advantage, right? All right, that one is interesting, but so be it. Another thing that I wondered is when you're dealing with the in-laws, can you get to the point where you say less is more? Or like you minimize the interactions if there's always friction as an end result?
I think if there's always friction, certainly you don't want to put yourself, you don't want to be the one subjecting yourself
the time to
you
all
know,
that, yes.
that kind of scenario. So some distance would help. But I also know that there are people who are married into very beautiful homes where love is in abundance, you know. And if it's in such, if it's such a scenario, I don't think that it's necessary to be that intentional about creating space.
Okay.
But there are situations where that is certainly the best way possible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then again, we said marriage is about serving.
Yes,
Precisely.
So
certainly.
it's about you serving your spouse, yeah, whichever way it is, yeah, and even serving that spouse's family. So that's the
Yes.
problem. Even the word serve has got some people like, please, me, I'm not yet serve anyone.
I
But it's
know.
about service, because now if we even bring it back to the Bible, I was so happy when I was just reading and researching and just praying about this, the way the Lord kept dropping things. He said that the last shall be first.
The first.
And that the Son of Man came to serve. So just by the fact that you're a Christian, let's not even start it, because faith means that you serve, means that you are last, means so you are always in a space of service.
Exactly.
So why are you avoiding? Psych yourself up, pray fast, get ready, be in that space and be helpful.
And serve.
Be helpful and serve and love.
And serve
Who
and
doesn't
love.
want serve and love? But you can't really avoid, because we said marriage is also about developing character.
Yes, that's
So there's
true.
still something about your character whether we like
That is
know
being
that God
shaped.
is dealing, that God is dealing with, because you're not
Yes,
perfect, yeah?
yes.
You're not the alpha, you're not the omega, and you're
Yes,
not perfect.
yes.
So there are issues about your life that also God is trying to work out.
Exactly.
Yes. So get in there. Get in there and get it worked out. Get it
true.
worked out. Get a grip on it. Because it's not a week. Or if it's a week, then I don't know. Just there are things you have to learn. You have to speak to yourself. Center yourself and say, can I do this? Because I don't think avoidance is it.
No.
And
So it's not
total avoidance either.
Exactly.
It's a scenario where because there's also possibility that you could be putting yourself in a scenario that may cause you to sin, you know, but you cannot avoid.
You cannot avoid
completely.
totally. You
cannot
maybe
completely
minimize a
avoid.
little.
But
Yes.
if it's a family that maybe requires that you meet 2-3 times a week for dinner, and that's not a very easy scenario for you to be in, maybe you can negotiate for the once a week, you
or
know,
something,
so
yes.
that there is presence, but it's also not presence that's hampering
your marriage.
your
causing
marriage,
you
or
3 times a week to be unhappy or whatever.
Yeah, but I totally agree with Pastor. You married into that family.
That's true.
They now belong.
Now you belong,
with them.
yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the other second issue, which is your family of origin and how it affects your marriage now. Like, do you move into marriage with a lot of baggage from where you're coming from? Pros and cons.
I can talk for myself.
Okay.
I certainly brought a load of baggage into my marriage. As I mentioned in the other episode, my parents broke up when I was 13. So the only modeling of marriage directly that I got was within the first 13 years of my life.
She's very
and
short, actually.
it was a short period,
Yes.
but it was also a very intense period because of the things I observed in their marriage. I'll never forget. There were long periods of silence.
Okay.
I remember, I lose track, but it could very easily have been 6 months not seeing them talk to each other.
6
and
months,
if they
that's a long
talk,
time.
it's, a lot of tension, a lot of, so
Discomfort, yeah.
yeah, so I came into my marriage thinking you don't talk about things.
Yes, okay.
If you're offended, you keep quiet. And often, I would not have my way, so I keep quiet. And I remember the earlier months of my marriage, it would be my husband just wanting to reconnect,
Yes.
apologizing for things he didn't even know existed, But then again, you get tired of that kind of person.
Yes.
So eventually he stopped the apologizing, and then I would be the one suffering.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and then how people communicate with each other, affection, a show of affection or the lack thereof. These are things you bring into your marriage.
Yes.
Based on what you have observed from
And
your own
experienced.
parents. But then parental influence of a marriage is not the only one that we have.
Okay.
We have things we have picked along the way. Maybe we had relatives who were older than us, who had good or bad marriges.
Exactly.
And
You
maybe
can
things
choose
we
to.
admired from them or things we didn't like about them.
Yes.
Then we have friends, we have things from the media.
Yes, that's true.
From church, from other social settings.
Exactly.
Or even traditional voices. You're
Yes.
told a wife is meant to be like
Like
this,
this.
like that. things we get told during the wedding.
Yes.
You know,
All the
satisfy
bridal
both his
showers.
stomachs, you know, and, you know, or, you know, a wife is meant to remain silent and not express themselves. All these things, people, I know I had my own load that I brought into my own marriage. I don't know about you, Pastor.
Yes, definitely. But I think also, like we were saying earlier, there's also the way, so there's a lot of, there's the parental influence, there's the modeling, because we learn from what has been modeled and from our experiences. But then there's always the way people also, I feel, make choices. So you can, like, let's say, it's a negative one, but let's say you found, let's say there was a lot of violence in your parental home. Then it's always like two schools come out of that. There's somebody who will never be violent, and there's somebody else who continues the violence into the next generation. So I think there's a matter of choice of sitting and saying what was good out of my parents' marriage and what was not good. What will I continue and what will I not continue? And because sometimes I think it can be so automatic, it's something that you really have to think about it and really shift your mindset, because it was normal, so it's almost automatic.
That's your mind goes that direction.
So it's almost automatic that you take from them. But again, that's also something that comes with, I think, maturity. But I think still with somebody who's younger now can watch it and say, can I examine my parents' marriage or the influences of marriage around me, take what's positive and not take what's negative, and make sure that, I think the other thing is to catch yourself. And sometimes you catch yourself doing something and it's like instinctive, then you say, oops, that's coming from that kind of influence. But I think when we take the good and we multiply the good, or you take the bad and learn how to do it differently from what you have observed now and from what you know and the knowledge you have acquired, then it can become something very, very powerful.
Excellent. And I think on that note, we'll take a break. Viewers, we'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers. We're happy that you've joined us today. Please remember our SMS line is 21144. Send in your SMSs. We're going to read them and we're going to respond to them today or at a later show. Thank you and enjoy the show. I'd like to pick up from where we left. Self-awareness. I noticed that the two of you ladies are very self-aware. Is it, do you become more self-aware as you grow, or is it something that you have to be intentional about? Sitting down and deciding, I need to look at my parents' marriage. How was it? How has it influenced me? I need to look at my you know, the benefits as well as the negatives, and choose what I'm going to carry on with me and what I'm going to have to stop. What is it that makes some people to be more self-aware than others, and what can be done to improve that?
I can speak for myself, and I think Pastor also said something to it, that it's about, sometimes it's about maturity. So it's something you learn along the way. You know, like they say, life teaches you. Yeah, if you have failed at something a number of times, you want to look back and consider, maybe there could be something about you that's leading it in that direction. So for me, it certainly was just getting to this place where I wanted different for myself. And then realizing that because I was the one who wanted different, I needed to take responsibility for the change process.
That's true.
And in that process, certainly, you know, I got better self-aware. And also the counseling process, both in my practice and for my own self, helped me acquire the concept of self-awareness and continually grow it.
That's true.
In an earlier episode, we were talking about preparation, and I think that would be a big help if that was sort of incorporated in that preparation for marriage.
Yes, the PMCC classes, the premarital counseling class, where people take a moment to look at where they're coming from.
Where they're coming from and the possible implications of what they're bringing into the marriage. And then just helped understand the value for self-awareness progressively, I think that would be a good start point for those who may never have had the opportunity for self-awareness.
Gosh, I have so much to say. That's a whole show for just hours. Please come back to just do a whole show, because I'm thinking, especially also now because of the things that I do. So I run a program called the Purpose and Leadership Forum. So in terms of that, I've understood purpose, and that purpose comes with leadership, and leadership comes with purpose. So there's it's a synergy. And then because now you're training other people, or teaching, or coaching, or mentoring, or counseling, or modeling, you yourself cannot give what you don't have. So there's a way that for me, I feel like God dealt with me, dealt with my issues, because how am I going to be able to govern? Because I always say it's about governance as well. So you have to be governable in order to govern. Leadership starts with self. Then now you can move forward. So I think because of that position, and then also I think as a pastor as well, because I don't have a church, but I'm a pastor of marketplace ministers who are in the marketplace. So that requires a lot of responsibility. So you've got to deal with issues yourself, you know. It's like, I think there's a place Paul says in the Bible, lest you yourself be found, you know, wanting. So there's that way. So that has just had to come. I think pain is another one. When you can come out of it positively or negatively. Because like I was telling you, there are a lot of people who criticize me for wanting things to do with marriage, even being with other marriage ministries, you know, people with ministry. So you'll find people say, how can you go to her and she's divorced, you know? But that's exactly why I always say, that's exactly why you should come to me, because I know how not to do it, by the way. I know these are the
you know the end of this road.
I know, please don't do this, if you do this, it's going to happen. So I find that very unfair also, and it brings me to the point of also leaders. We put our leaders on a pedestal, so the leader can never be real. I'm always saying, like, can you imagine if you go to church and the pastors would come, him and his wife would come and say, we've been fighting all the way getting to church. It would help us. It's not a good thing, but it would help us to know, oh, okay, so maybe this is normal. So how did you solve that problem? I mean, addressing real things. Because what we do is not only our pastors, but all our leaders, whether political, every leader, we put them on a pedestal. And that's why they even say that leadership journey is lonely. Why? Because as you rise up, you have to be almost fake. I mean, you have to be, either you can't be true, you can't talk about yourself truthfully, you can't share truthfully, your circle gets smaller. So, you know, there's authenticity, I think, is
lost.
also, it gets lost. And therefore, if then I start now emulating you, so the cycle continues, and I don't know that you have real struggles, because you never talk about your real struggles, or what the real issues that you're facing. So I think also pain and purpose and positioning requires you to be self-aware and also vulnerable to a point. Because like I was telling you, there's some people who say, Pastor Angie, you share too much, don't be too vulnerable. But that vulnerability and that authenticity and that realness is the one that ministers. People need it. They need to hear that. That oh, okay, so you're also struggling with this. So also you're facing this. I'm normal. Because then we paint a picture of how fake life is, and then people do fake things to add to their life. I mean, it's such a vicious cycle, but that you have to be self-aware. So I think that's the thing, like you said, you just have to be self-aware because of maybe the position that you occupy, the people that you want to coach and model and mentor after. Even if you have nobody else, you have no other audience except your family, those are people you're coaching, those are people you're modeling life after. So you have to be self-aware in order to give. You see, you can't give what you don't have. And then you have to continuously, I think, you're also intentional and purposeful and deliberate, but I think you have to be continuously, I feel for myself also, in a situation where you examine yourself. Really, I said to confront yourself. Because sometimes we know we present even fakeness. We can even tell stories till they become the truth about us. And they're fake, they're not real. So also once in a while you have to confront self and see, how am I doing in this area? Or I'll even hear a little voice, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have said that. Why did you do that? Don't do this. When you come into a remote energy. So I'm continuously evaluating myself, confronting why I do the things I do, what needs to change about the way that I do my things, and then that's where you find that you're self-aware. You're becoming more and more self-aware. It's a process as well.
So another thing that we need to talk about, our topic is marriage killers and builders. And I noticed that the same things that kill a marriage tend to be also on the flip side, the same things that build a marriage. And on that note, we need to talk about sex, because it's something that is talked about a lot as a marriage builder. What are your views about it? Is it a killer, builder, or both? It's probably both. The lack of it.
Sumi will tell us.
Sumi.
I think we all have something to say about that. But my personal view is that sex was given as a builder of marriage, not as a destroyer. I think the origin was meant for it to help marriages. I also think, however, that sex is overrated in many ways. It's very possible that the way people talk about sex out there is not in line with the reality of their sexual experiences in marriage. But I think there's also a conflict in the perception of sex, especially in the Christian circles, where sex is usually spoken of very negatively until you get married, and then you're sort of supposed to, almost supposed to switch, flip, and it now is okay to embrace and all that. So there are many factors contributing to whether sex becomes good or bad for marriage. I have found, though, that the majority of couples I work with in therapy come to me for sexlessness. And that seems to be a shocker to many people. And when I talk about sexlessness, I'm talking about years without sexual intimacy in marriage. And that number seems to be rising.
Wow, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, so I know that there are many sexless marriages, and I don't know if sex was meant to add to the value of a marriage. I don't know that the value of marriage would necessarily be what it is without sex. So I don't know what your experience has been that way.
Even as you're speaking, I'm just thinking, it's also that confidence. It's back to self-awareness, back to being confident about you, so that you can bring that confidence to the sexual relationship in the marriage. And then I believe very strongly that sex is it's very spiritual. And therefore, if we're talking about a faith-based context, it's worship, and it does bring you together, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It brings an intimacy and a connection. So even if I was thinking like from a pastoral kind of view, this is something that's trying to separate you. Because I'd be interested to know what's I'd love to hear whether the statistics, whether the people are able to come back into having sex within their marriages, and whether that helps. So I think there's a disconnection that disconnects, because it's about bringing both our bodies together, isn't it? And that's a connection, and it's a special moment. It's a beautiful moment. Therefore, if it's not happening, then there's a problem. And I think the minute that it stops happening, so that needs to be addressed. It needs to be nipped in the bud quickly. It's not something that can be allowed just to build on. Because then again, remember earlier we were talking about corruption. Then it brings in the corruption, where both the male and the female, the man and the woman, would look for sex outside somewhere else. So we'd want to know what that is. And the other thing I found is that when women have children, I don't know why, but we don't tell people this often enough. I don't know that, but when people have sex after children, I think is different than sex before children. So I think when couples have children, also depending on, it's not an absolute, but depending on what the process of healing maybe is for the woman, or what the person experienced in terms of the delivery, there's something that changes, the dynamics change. Or is it maybe there's a child now, therefore there's something else you have to look after, you're tired, your body. I mean, there's so many dynamics, I think, before sex, before marriage, and sex before childbearing and after. So I think that's another dynamic that needs to be worked out of. And I think also our lives, people are tired. I think at the end of the day, you are so tired. I can't even wrap my head around that drama, please. I know, like, please, my day is enough. But maybe we need to put it in the priority that it needs. Because I'm very sure that it's a priority. So it needs to be a priority. So it needs to be given back its rightful place. And like she says, now the church never talks about it.
That's true.
We don't talk about these things openly even to our children. So it's a taboo subject. So it grows up being taboo, and then now I don't even know how you get help for it. Even when you're in the marriage, how do you get help? Because it seems to be a taboo subject, and then it becomes you can't, and then now you can, like you've said. So it's a very difficult subject, but a subject that needs to be addressed and looked squarely in the face.
It
and
certainly
addressed.
needs to be addressed.
And is it because of health issues?
There are many
or is
factors.
it communication breakdown?
There are many issues, and certainly those are some of them.
Okay.
Those are certainly some of them. But, you know, when you're talking about it being a taboo subject, the reality is that very few couples, even between themselves, would talk about sex,
Yes.
you know. So it's a hard to talk about topic in itself. But some of the things that are killing sex in marriage are, of course, could be medical issues. Like, you know, earlier we were talking about erectile dysfunctionality, certainly. And if that's the situation, again, working on the marital relationship helps.
Yes.
Because if the relationship is in the right place, you can look for solutions together.
Okay.
But if you're not talking to each other about these matters, people are suffering in silence.
That's true.
And it becomes a very lonely place. Infidelity has been mentioned as a possibility for sexlessness in marriage. But I think there are variations there.
Okay.
It could be that contempt initially was what drove one away from the marriage bed.
Okay.
Okay? And by contempt, I mean perhaps it could be a wife who disrespects the husband and maybe demeans his sexual capacity to the point where he now finds fulfillment wherever else. And if there is contempt, chances are restoring sexual intimacy in the marriage is possible, but there needs to be quite a bit of work on the wife's end. But by and large, infidelity often by itself is not a killer of sex in marriage. What it would perhaps provide for the person who's strayed is variety, so that they have it out there and they have it within the marriage also. So that is hardly a killer of sex in marriage. Again, remember we are talking about a long years without
period of time.
I remember the first couple I worked with had gone for 2 years without sex.
Wow.
Now it's not unusual for me to meet some who've gone for 6 years, 8 years, sexlessly. Yeah. But often, especially in the world we are in today, a lot of the major killers of sexual intimacy in marriage are pornography and masturbation.
Yeah.
And to some extent, bisexuality or homosexuality.
Okay.
But pornography and masturbation are the main killers presently. And it doesn't help that we have access to these things, especially pornography.
So easily.
On the phone.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, I think the whole issue of sexually transmitted diseases did something to society. So I've had cases where parents encourage their children to masturbate rather than engage sexually, because, you know, you're growing, there'll be sexual demands from your developmental process. So rather than go sleep with someone you don't know where they've been and all that, fulfill yourself.
So it's a learned behavior. So you get into marriage already being able
behavior.
Okay.
It's often a learned behavior.
Yeah.
And if someone has been practicing masturbation from their adolescence, by the time they're getting to marrying age, it's an addiction.
It is.
And the excitement and the fascination of getting married and all that may take it away for a while.
Yes.
But then eventually
Relapse.
it comes back. And someone who's learned to fulfill themselves can hardly ever get fulfillment from another person, because another human being doesn't have the capacity to understand your body the way you understand it yourself. So that by in itself can be a major killer. But there's also possibility of masturbation from watching pornography. So that, you know, out of engaging in that, now you seek fulfillment for yourself, and eventually you get hooked. But there is also pornography without masturbation that robs the marriage of sexual intimacy. Some of the things you watch on pornography can never be accomplished in the marital bed. So comparisons and, you know, or just, I've had clients tell me, I don't need sex after I have watched pornography because I don't even need to touch myself. Just watching gives me the fulfillment
that
I need.
Yeah.
So these are things that are stealing, and because it's such a secret,
very secret,
very private.
Maybe even
people
the
don't
spouse
talk
doesn't even know
about
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Pastor was asking, what do you do then?
Yeah, what do you do then?
The beginning point, again, it goes back to self-awareness. Am I even in touch with the fact that being in a sexless marriage is not fulfilling for me? You know, because if I'm aware, I can own it and I can do something about it.
Exactly.
If I'm not aware, I'll end up being frustrated without necessarily being able to point out what the frustration basis is. And therefore I can't do anything about it. But if I know, then I know that without talking about it, it will never be resolved.
Exactly.
And hopefully together, I can handle myself in a manner that can persuade my spouse to agree to seeking help.
Yeah,
and we
together.
can support each other through that process.
And does it affect both sexes? I mean, because there's also this school of thought that thinks that a point in time comes for women when you're no longer very interested in sex. So is the sexlessness coming from the lady not wanting to give it, or is it vice versa, both ways?
By the way, if there's agreement on both ends that we don't need sex, that's not considered a sexless marriage.
Oh,
okay. It's sexlessness
because
when there is discontent on one.
On one also, I don't even think that's even accurate. I don't know. We need research, but I don't think it's accurate to say that at a certain age women don't need sex or that men can go. I think if it's an agreement, they both can enjoy sex up to their last day. Yes, because you know, first of all, we're getting healthier. 80s. We're doing a lot of exercise. People are walking.
Yes.
So all those factors that maybe were there before, and I think it's just a mindset.
It's a mindset
because in other nations it doesn't happen, or in other backgrounds. Yeah. So I think it's just a mindset that was probably tried to be African, but it's not really. I don't think it's a real. I don't think it's a real mindset at all. It's just trying to put down one the other. It's an excuse. So there's nothing that cannot be overcome by talking. And like I said, we're also living and being strong. A lot of people are doing a lot of lifestyle changes to be healthier, to be stronger, you know. So I don't see why they cannot still be strong in that thing, but in sex as well. But I was talking, as Sumi was talking, I was also thinking, I think it's also a choice. There's self-awareness, but there's also choices. So that's why I say we need to nip it in the bud early. And then you see this thing of where women would withhold sex. You see, I think I'm almost thinking we have to become like men almost, because men, it doesn't matter what is going on around, we can still have sex. So I think also women, I would challenge us to get into that perspective, that it's not really about what the circumstances are. We can be at war with each other, but we're still going to enjoy this part of our marriage, you know, sort of like maybe putting it in a box. The same men have boxes, so putting it in compartments and not putting too many consequences and constitutions and laws to go with when you can have sex or when it can happen. So I think it just has to happen as often as it can. And again, like with everything about marriage, there just has to be a lot of conversation around it, a lot of open dialogue about it, and also unmet expectations, because maybe you're not communicating your expectations, either one of you. So these expectations are not met, but they can be met.
They can be
but
met.
if they're communicated and talked about,
they can be
then
met.
they can be met.
And that withholding of sex, again, I think, Pastor, goes back to the corruption we were talking about earlier, where sex is used as a weapon.
Yes.
And of course, you know, when that becomes the trend, you're training the other person on what to expect or not to expect of you. And it's not unusual that one then gets to the point where they're like, okay, you know, if I have to buy sex from my wife, I might as well get the variety out on the streets. So self-awareness, again, will guide one's intentionality. If I want a lifelong, successful, thriving marriage, then there's what I must do for my marriage. And acknowledging what my role sexually is in my marriage will help me align myself.
That's true.
Yeah, so that I can achieve what I set out to achieve.
And there's something I wanted to say, sorry, as you said also about masturbation and pornography, I think there's another one that's affecting sex, and it's toys as well.
Oh, yeah.
Sexual toys, because anything that is not, I don't want to say human, but anything that is not natural, that's the word, is going to bring out, is going to pose a problem.
Yes.
And again, back to self, because this is, masturbation is self, using the sexual toys is self.
Itself.
So what pornography, I can enjoy it, self. So it's back to self-awareness. Why am I doing this? Why did we get into this? Marriage is not about individuals. Marriage is about us living and cleaving and becoming one and doing life together. So that is something that we've got to wrap our head around, and in order to get out of that hole that's been created. And I think if we stop having sex, it has to be dealt with quickly. Quickly and immediately.
The longer it takes,
the harder it is to maybe
what you don't use dies.
Exactly.
You know,
even
so
your
if
muscles,
you're not precisely, so you really don't. By the time it's going, if for example, just for illustration purposes, if you are used to having sex 2-3 times a week, and you go 2 weeks without any, you want by the end of the second week to be asking, what's happening? Is everything okay? Especially when there hasn't been communication or indication that there is an issue. You want to raise it the earliest possible so that you can deal with it. Don't be afraid to rock the boat. If you don't rock the boat in your marriage, external forces will rock it for you. And you really do not want that to happen.
That's a nice statement.
I think there's something that is important for us to look into with regards to marriage killers. And that's the issue of childlessness also. I don't know, because that's a growing...
It's a growing thing.
Growing,
actually, that's true. We're talking about marriage killers and marriage builders. Remember, the SMS line is 21144. And it's very interesting. The same thing that can kill can also
now
build.
We are talking about children,
and they can kill
also. The lack of children can also...
Yes, and it's actually becoming, I think, common to find that sometimes it's because the couple has agreed not to have kids for a long period of time, but other times you can't really tell. It's also a taboo topic.
Yes.
I think generally we really need to talk about and be open about a lot of these things that are killing
about
the marriage.
Everything in marriage. We really need to talk about that. But also, as we are talking of children being marriage builders, children often by themselves can be marriage killers.
Exactly.
There are many ways in which, you know, I like to say that children don't belong in the marriage. They're a product of the marriage, but they're not part of the marriage. They're not part of the marriage. And if we don't see them as such, then we can allow them to interfere with the marriage to the point where, you know, it can actually becomes detriment, to its detriment.
Yes.
But childlessness in itself, it could be out of choice. That's the rare couple who choose to get married and not have children, but they exist.
They do.
It's also a different kind of couple that gets married and chooses to go 3, 4, 5 years without children. We can have children after we have our careers in place, our, you know, savings and all that. But often, especially increasingly, it's being found that such couples, when they are ready to have the children, often those children are not as easily forthcoming.
Yes.
So, and then again, it's also very common nowadays that people get married and go in thinking we are going to start a family immediately after the honeymoon or during the honeymoon and all that. And 2, 3 years, nothing is happening.
Yes.
So that again can be a huge marriage killer, especially again if you're not properly anchored.
Yes,
you know,
centered,
did you if you're not whole, because well, it's I guess it's debatable whether marriage was meant to be just for procreation. But I think that there are marriages that God intended to happen, but without children. And then there are those others that he intended for procreation.
Well, give us your parting shot.
My parting shot is that
on marriage killers and builders.
On marriage killers, please be open with each other.
Yes.
Own your part. You know, I've had people say, oh, my husband doesn't like talking when but pray and trust God to show you the right way to talk to your husband in a manner that would compel him to be interested in the things that you're saying to him. Okay. And be open. You're married, you're one.
Yes.
So talk about everything, but talk about it in a manner that's effective. Constructive and not destructive.
Yes.
Often when we are stretched and we are stressed, we are not at our best. in raising some of these issues. So take time, think through, pray, and then present it the best way possible.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's get a parting shot also from Pastor Angie.
I have so much to say, but I think the thing is that what you said, I think marriage killers are also marriage builders. Yes. So I think there needs to be lots of conversation, because what builds the marriage can also kill the marriage, and the other way around. So I think we need to have conversations, very unique conversations, very heartwarming conversation, and vulnerability again. I think it was my last parting shot, but I think it's everything. Be vulnerable, be authentic, and at least to each other. To each other, there has to be an authenticity, a vulnerability, a realness that needs to happen between the two of you. And then I think now with even the conversation that we're having, and many people are having those conversations, is have conversations about everything. Talk about everything, address everything, address what happens if we don't have children, address if one of us is transferred, what happens, or how we, and just talk about how we're going to talk our in-laws. Just talk about everything and everything, so that there are no surprises, you know. And then I think there's something you said earlier, which I just felt like saying, that people also change. You know, sometimes I think we block, even in the marriage, we've got to let it, I'm almost feeling like evolve and sort of flow, you know. So there's a way, you can't now get stuck on how this marriage was year one if we're in year 4. Things have changed, people have changed, the circumstances have changed. So we need to flow. We sort of need to be fluid and flow with the changes that are happening, and don't get stuck on, you know, this is what you did. And mostly that's women, you know, women really remember too many things. You've got to let people be and let people flow, and also understand that people change.
People change. Thank you, viewers, and thank you, guests. It's been so awesome having you here, and we look forward to you coming back again. You have a lot to tell us. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Please keep the SMSs coming in, and until we see you next time, bye for now. Thank you.